This week we are going to be starting part 2 of Unit 1 on decimals. I wanted to make a quick refresher course to help you remember some key concepts from your elementary days. Here are some key words to keep in mind throughout the video. Place value, decimal point, rounding, whole number, tenths, hundredths, thousands, and equivalent. Some of these words may look familiar because decimals and fractions are equivalent forms of each other, and you will see that later on in the video. So I like this joke because it said you're absolutely right, the decimal point is in the wrong place. So decimal points play a big part in the real world, so that's why it's really important that we understand how decimals function. Let's start by taking a look at place value. Place value plays an important role when dealing with decimal operations. But the first thing I want to point out that may help you remember the names of place values when you are actually naming them is that there is a reflection happening. The reflection is happening over the ones place, and the decimal point actually belongs with the ones place. If you think about the place value distance from 1, the name is very similar from a whole value to a decimal value. So I have 1 place away from the ones place is the tens. But in decimal form, if I'm 1 place to the right of the decimal, I'm tenths. If I'm 2 place values away from the ones place, I'm in the hundredths. If I'm 2 place values away from after the decimal, I'm in the hundredths. And it continues this way. We have thousands and thousands. So it is a reflection of the names. The only thing they are adding is the THS to represent that it is in decimal form, or fraction form if you think of that this 2 tenths could also be written as 2 tenths. Or we could write this entire thing as 256 thousandths. And that's why it ends in the THS, is because we're actually talking about fractional value, because decimals are also fractional value of a whole. Let's practice naming place value of decimals. Pause the video, try these on your own, and then come back and check your answers. Welcome back if you've paused the video. Let's take a look at the first one. We notice that the first one is 1 away from the ones place, so that would be in the tenths place. Now let's look at number 2. Number 2 is 1, 2, 3, 4 away from the ones place, which would put it in the 10,000ths place. On number 3, we are 1, 2, 3 places away from the ones place, which would mean we are in the thousands place. Number 4, we are 1 away from the ones place, which would mean we're also once again in the tenths place. Number 5 is similar to number 3. We are 1, 2, 3 away from the ones place, so that would be the thousands place. And on number 3, we are 1, 2 away from the ones place, but on the left this time, so we would be in the hundreds place. Notice there is no TH at the end of hundreds because it's not a fractional part. It's a whole 100, actually 900 in this case. Now that we reviewed place value, let's practice ordering decimals from least to greatest. So in this first one, notice that 91 is the whole amount for each of them, so I cannot put them in order by their whole number. So we are going to have to look at the decimal place value. You always want to start with the tenths place because it's the closest to the whole number value. So if I'm looking at the tenths place first, I notice that my smallest number is a 1. 1/10 is smaller than 8/10 or 5/10. So I know this number would go first. Then I look to see if there's any other numbers that are less, that aren't the same. So I have this 5/10, and it is smaller than 8/10, so I know it would go next. And then I have 8/10, but then I have another 8/10. So now I have to go to the next place value, which would be the hundredths place. But this one doesn't have a hundredths place. So we can always add a 0 to put in the place value because it does not change the decimal. It's an equivalent form of the decimal. So and now I can look, 0 is less than the 5/10 up there. So I know that 91 8/10 would come next, and last would be the 91 and 855 thousandths. Okay, why don't you pause the video and try number 2 on your own. Okay, welcome back. Once again, if you notice, all the whole numbers are the same. They're all 7. So now I need to look at the place values. There's not a place value. There's not even a decimal in A. So we can add a decimal and add a 0. Like I said, a 0 doesn't represent an amount when we add it to a decimal place value, as long as the decimal is before the 0. So in this, now I can look at all of my tenths place. And I notice 0 is the lowest. So the 7 is actually first. Then 3 would be next. So I have 7 3/10. Then 4. So I have 7 and 463 thousandths. I don't even have to worry about looking at the hundreds and thousands because the 10th place is lower than the 7 and 8/10. So now we have these in order. So remember, start with the tenths place, then move to the hundreds if needed, and then the thousandths if even needed that. Rounding decimals is the last thing we're going to talk about today. Rounding decimals is important for you to understand. It will continue to come up in your educational career in math and science classes. So I like this visual. I borrowed it from Global Nerdy. Thinking of a roller coaster. The numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 are not quite up the hill yet. So they are going to round down to the lower number, where 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 have already made it over the hill, so they are going to round up to the higher number. So let's look at what this looks like with decimals. Okay, let's take a look at rounding these problems. Remember, 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or more, add 1 more. So the first set, we're looking at the tenths place, so I'm going to go and underline the tenths place in each one of these. Remember, it is 1 away from the ones place after the decimal. So when we're rounding to the tenths place, that means we need to look at the hundredths place to tell us what to do. So now I'm going to go circle the hundredths place because that's going to be the key number to tell me what should I do. So in this first one, I noticed that 7 falls in the 5 or more category. So that means that this 1 and 27 hundredths is actually going to change to 1 and 3/10. And this might help you understand why. If I write the two numbers that I could round it to, which one is it closer to? 1 and 27 hundredths is closer to 1 and 30 hundredths, which is also 1 and 3/10. They're equivalent forms. Okay, looking at the next one, I have a 0. 4 or less. 0 is less than 4, so I'm going to let it rest. So I'm going to leave this as 4 and 4/10. Next, I'm going to look at this 9, and it's going to tell me what do I do with this 0. Well, 9 is in the 5 or more category, so I know I need to round it to 7 and 1/10. So this next second, we're looking at the hundredths place, so I'm going to go underline again all my hundredths place values, and then I'm going to go circle all of the numbers following the hundredths place value. So on this first one, I have a 9. We talked about last problem that 9 rounds up, so this would change to 7 and 11 hundredths. This next one, we have a 5. 5 or more, we're adding again. So this one would change to 3 and 66 hundredths. And lastly, we have a 3, which tells me it's less, so I need to let it rest. So this would say 2 and 7 hundredths. I hope this refresher helped you remember how to round decimals. We will be working on this in class this week as well. Great job, guys, on completing the decimal video refresher course. I made a quick quizzes for you to work on. It's 15 questions about rounding, comparing, and naming decimals. An important date that is coming up really quickly is the decimal test will be on September 20th, which isn't this Tuesday, but next Tuesday. I will have a review out and ready by Wednesday this week. So hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you tomorrow.